Hi there and welcome to the Silverbird Selection video. I recently uploaded my 10th game review, and a few reviews back on one of the comments I had a comment from a subscriber called Zippy2020 who suggested that maybe I should be comparing my review scores to the ones from ZZap64 back in the day, and I like that idea, so that's what this video is all about. We're going to head over to my computer in just a second and we're going to look at my reviews compared with the reviews from ZZap64, and also I'm going to compare with the reviews of users on Lemon64 and see whether we agree or disagree on the games that I've reviewed so far. So let's head over to my computer and check them all out. Here we are then on my computer desktop, and I've got my Silverbird collection tracking spreadsheet open, and I've just filtered it down to just the games on the spreadsheet that I've reviewed so far. So you can see down the left there the list of 10 games, well 10 games and Micro Rhythm, which is a utility, and you can also see all my ratings for them over there. So you've got packaging, presentation, graphics, sound, playability, and then the total score. That's what we'll be comparing to the ZZap score. Also a column saying whether it's worth it or not in terms of the asking price of the game, was it value for money or not, which you've already seen me doing all the reviews, so I shall continue. So we're going to start at the top. May as well go through these in alphabetical order, just like I reviewed them. So get Beach Buggy Simulator and go to Lemon64, search for that game. So here's Beach Buggy Simulator. You can see that the Lemon users from 21 votes gave it 4.7, which is very close to my score that I gave the game of 4.8. But what did ZZap think? So if you're not familiar with this facility, virtually every game on Lemon has a link to the review, which is a scan of ZZap64. You can see this was ZZap64 issue 41, page 113. And if you click on that, it goes off to another site called zap64.co.uk and shows you the page of the game. Now actually what's come up there is European 5-a-side, because by sheer coincidence this page from ZZap64 back in September 1988 has actually got two of the games I reviewed on it, Beach Buggy Simulator and European 5-a-side. So let's focus on Beach Buggy Simulator for now. So I'm not going to get too bogged down with the bulk of the review, which basically just describes the game and how to play it. What I'm going to be looking at is the scores, which as you can see they're in the box on the right hand side, and any comments from the reviewers. So just a comment I've picked out here. What with this Ninja Scooter Simulator and the future release of Stunt Bike Simulator, Silverbird seems to have acquired Codemaster's characteristic. Stand by for a court case. I think that was probably a bit of an excessive comment to say there was going to be a court case between them, but as I mentioned when I did the review of Ninja Scooter Simulator, it did seem like Firebird were trying to cash in on the simulator craze that Codemasters began. So let's move over to the scores here, and you can see presentation 61%, nothing special. Graphics 29%, I think that's a little bit harsh, they weren't that bad. Sound, I'd go the other way, that's probably a little bit of an overrating, maybe it's about right actually. Hookability 59%, and lastability, well I don't really do these scores, I just kind of go with the playability for the overall gameplay. And then obviously the overall score there, 21%, an outdated game both in concept and execution. And just as I mentioned, one of the reviewers here has mentioned that it is a bit of a clone of Moon Patrol. So yeah, they weren't a fan of Beach Buggy Simulator. I mean, I wasn't a fan of it either, but I think that's a little bit of a harsh score, 21%. That's basically 2 out of 10. So that was Beach Buggy Simulator. While we're on this page of ZZap64, we may as well look at European 5-a-side as well. And you can see a pretty scathing review here. May as well just move straight to the scores. Presentation, graphics, sound, hookability, lastability, all around about 30% or less. I think the presentation was better than they're making out there. Sound is about right, it wasn't very good. Graphics were not spectacular and the gameplay wasn't great, but again 15%, I gave it about 5 out of 10. 15% seems a little bit harsh. I mean, it was playable. It's probably better as a 2-player game than a 1-player game. It wasn't amazing by any means, but it certainly wasn't absolutely awful to warrant that really low score, I think. So just looking at some of the reviewer comments here, this chap was not happy. European 5-side might make you think that poorly conceived, unplayable games are making a comeback. Porky computer football was trotting up and down a single screen width pitch to deathly silence. They're pretty thick too. It's possible to keep possession of the ball by just standing still. Yeah, the playability wasn't great on it by any means, but I still think that 15% is a little bit on the harsh side. I guess they just wanted to make sure you didn't buy it. So moving on to the next game on the list, Chicken Chase. Again, pretty similar scores between myself and Lemon64. I gave it 6.6, Dave giving it 6.3. Let's have a look at the ZZap review from issue 3, so a very early review. This will be of the original release version in the white packaging. That's confirmed there because it says it was £2.50. So this is what ZZap looked like right at the very beginning if you've not seen it before. A nice colour picture of the gameplay screen there. And it looks like they had an extra review category at this point. They also got originality. Again, I haven't got any of those categories for mine, so we can only really compare the overall score. So they've given it 79%. Now you'd probably take into account that this review was written in 1985, where the quality of the games wasn't quite as high as it was much later on. So I think that's probably fair. It's a pretty good game, as I've said. I wouldn't rate it quite that highly, but I've got the benefit of hindsight. And just looking at some of the reviewer comments, all pretty consistently positive. Humorous nature of the game gives it instant appeal and it has addictive qualities. Touch repetitive. What goes on behind the door with the heart will not be mentioned. Great graphics, tune and gameplay. And wonderfully irreverent sense of humour from our best of enemies across the channel. Not a great deal of lastability since the action doesn't change that much. So yeah, they pretty much agree with what I said. It's a fun game. Bit repetitive, but definitely worth playing. So the next game we're going to take a look at the reviews for is Decathlon. And this has got a very high score from Lemon users, from 156 votes, 8 out of 10. That's high praise indeed. I wouldn't give it that high praise. My score was 5.7, but obviously I'm taking the quality of the graphics and the sound and things like that into account. So let's take a look at the ZZap review. So this was a review firstly of the re-release of the game, the Firebird re-release, as you can see there, rather than the original version of the game that was released back in 1984. I don't think ZZap was even around in 84. And again, the reviewers are pretty happy with it. It's got 76% overall. 61% for the graphics, not thrilling, but the sprites are well animated and the background scrolls smoothly. I totally agree with that. Sound 34, suitable spot effects and jingles. Yeah, the sound was very limited on this game in my opinion, but I guess that rating's reasonable. And obviously the 3 gameplay related scores are all pretty good as well. Presentation too. So in terms of the review comments, they're all pretty much just saying you'll knacker your joystick, but it's a really good game and really playable and good to play with friends. So both ZZap and Lemon rate it a bit higher than I do, but I still thought it was a decent game, definitely worth getting hold of. So next up we have Jerry the Germ Goes Body Popping. This has got a score of 4.7 from Lemon users, which tallies up pretty closely with my score of 4.9. Let's take a look at the ZZap review from April 1986. Horrible black and white photo of one of the game screens there. Now one thing to note here is they were reviewing it as though it was a $7.95 game. You might recall when I did the review that it was originally released on the Spectrum at $7.95, but then when it came out on the Commodore 64 it was released at budget price. Now I wonder if this review had anything to do with that, because, well, we'll get to the comments in a minute, but just looking at the review scores, they're pretty similar to what I was saying. Pretty good presentation, pretty good graphics, very good sound, but then when you get to the gameplay it's really lacking. and the overall score 39% is pretty much what I was saying. A simple 6-screen arcade game with a perverse sense of humour and little else. I think that's fair. But what's notable from the individual reviewer comments is things like, Jerry the Germ is too expensive, and for what it is I doubt its credibility at budget price. And then Julian Rignall said, it's surprising that Firebird are asking $7.95 for this program. At $1.99 it would have seemed just about passable. Yeah, so it does seem like maybe it would have got a slightly better score if it had been pitched to them as a budget game rather than a full price game. So that was quite interesting, I thought. So next up we'll look at the reviews for Hero, which I gave 6.9. Really strong positive reviews on Lemon 64 again, 8.5 from 270 votes. I think they're probably maybe overrating it just slightly, but I guess it's based on the nostalgia and what you thought of it when you were playing it as a kid. If we go over to the ZZap review, once again you can see this was a review of the re-release Firebird Activision 199 rather than the original release. Some nice screenshots on this review, a nice full page. In fact, it's more than a full page. It looks like it overlaps to the next page, so we'll have a look at that in a second. But just looking at some of the comments here, looks awful, sounds terrible, plays absolutely beautifully. I think it's a bit harsh to say it looks and sounds terrible, but fair enough. But one of the best games to spend a couple of coins on this month, they said there. So let's just look on the next page for the review scores. So we're just looking down the left hand side here. Now something I noticed here in the description of the game is later levels can be accessed from the title screen and played as normal, allowing a taste of what's to come without having to play through the earlier stages. I did not know that, and I'm not even sure if that's true. I didn't see anything in the instructions or on the title screen to suggest that that's possible, but maybe it is, I don't know. So a comment here, possibly overpriced when first released, it really hits the mark now and shouldn't be missed. Again, just saying it's a really good budget title. So looking at the scores, we've got presentation pretty decent, very decent in fact they think, graphics just above average, sound no music and sparse but adequate spot effects, it's fair enough, and then the gameplay ratings are all very high, which is pretty much what I said as well. So they've rated it perhaps a little bit higher than me, possibly because of the fact that they were happier that it was a re-released at the budget price, but basically we're in agreement that it's a good game and definitely worth buying. So now let's take a look at Eyeball, and we'll definitely see a difference of opinion in some of the review scores here. I gave it a score of 5.4, was not impressed at all. Lemon give it 6.8, so fairly just above average really from 63 votes. And then we get to the ZZap review. This is from July 1987, and they've given it 2-page spread again by the looks of it. Some nice colour screenshots. We'll get onto the actual scores in a moment, but just look at some of the reviewer comments here. The speech is incredible and the music's superb, but it would be nice if the game was of a similarly high standard. It's not awful, just a bit on the dull side. Well, I'd go as far as to say that actually it's quite awful. And Julian Rignall saying, yet another budget winner appears, this time in the form of a noisy vertically scrolling race game come shoot 'em up. Apart from being incredibly playable and addictive, Eyeball has some incredibly clear sampled speech. Again, they're just talking about the speech, and this is what I was talking about when I did my review. It's like the speech kind of glosses over some of the facts that the game's actually really infuriatingly difficult and hard to play. So let's have a look at page 2, and yeah, they've actually given this budget game a 2-page spread, which is pretty surprising. Lots of screenshots. So another review here. Pleasantly surprised by Eyeball. It may take a while to get into, but it's deviously addictive, beautifully adorned with a multitude of colours. Somebody saw something that I didn't at all there. So we get to the review scores, and they've gone 73% for presentation, 78% for graphics, 95% for sound because of fabulous speech and a brilliant tune and neat spot effects. Well, again, they really got excited about the speech on it, and I think that kind of blinded them to some of its failings. But in terms of hookability, lastability, and they've now got a category of value here, which they've given really high, because obviously they think it's a really great game. So those scores are quite high, and then the overall is 80%, an unusual and competent blend of shoot 'em up and racing action. Honestly, this game is not worth that score. That was definitely overrated by ZZap. So the next game is not actually a game, it's Microrhythm. The next thing we're going to look at is Microrhythm, which didn't get a ZZap review because it's not a game. So all we can go from is the Lemon score, which is 7.2 from 15 votes, so pretty respectable. One thing notable about this is there's a comment from the programmer of the game, Simon Pick. Quickest game he's ever written, 5 days start to end. It went on to sell many tens of thousands of copies. Long live dodgy samples. And also there's a comment from the chap that did the loading screen as well. Took ages to get going on it. After all, what do you draw for a digital drum box when you haven't even been sent the cover art? And he had loads of fun with it, so that was nice to see they actually tried out something he did the loading screen for. That's Stephen Robertson, by the way, or Sir as his initials go on the loading screens. He did quite a few loading screens for Mastertronic as well. So yeah, no ZZap review for that. Just for comparison though, my review score was 5.5, so I didn't rate it quite as highly as the people that have rated it on Lemon, but it was pretty good. Not much use anymore, but at the time was probably pretty cool. So let's move on to the next game, which we'll see again some massive differences of opinion on here. Ninja Scooter Simulator. As you'll know from my review recently, I was reasonably impressed with this game and gave it a score of 6.3. The score on Lemon is 2.7 from 13 votes, and it's even got a little turd emoji against it, ranked 91 in the worst list. So yeah, not happy with this at all. But if you look at the comments, this backs up what I was saying when I did the review about the fact that no one understood that what a ninja scooter really was. So you've got this comment, a ninja on a scooter, Ninja Scooter Simulator, what's next, Ninja Snowblower Simulator, where's the ninja, that doesn't look like a ninja on the scooter. I suppose it's called Ninja because Ninja always sold back then, and maybe that's because you drive by night and that's when ninjas tend to act. Yeah, again, all these people just don't understand why it's called Ninja Scooter Simulator. And then we get to the ZZap review. As you can see, they weren't impressed either. They gave it 30%. Only a die-hard Metrocross addict would find this addictive. I did mention in my review that it had been likened to Metrocross, but I don't think there are that many similarities between it. In terms of the other scores, presentation 48%, no loading, tune, screen and standard options. Graphics they weren't impressed with, sound they weren't impressed with either, and they sort of suggested that it's got a bit of interest but it didn't last very long, which is probably fair, to be honest. But again, if you look at the review comments, you've got, I don't know about anyone else, but I've never heard of a ninja ride into battle on a scooter before. Again, that's not what ninja scooters were. Doesn't mention anything like that on the second review comments there, but you get the idea. They weren't happy with it. They just thought it was a Metrocross clone. I obviously thought something different to them, and perhaps it's me that's wrong and everyone else is right in this case, but I don't know, I thought it was pretty decent. They also mention in the comments here that the ninja's speed is slowed by gratings which are dotted around the levels. It's not a ninja. So finally we move on to my most recent game review, Oh No, which I gave 7.2. The score on Lemon is 6.4, so fairly similar. And if we go to the ZZap review, just a half-page review in the budget section for this one. Got a nice screenshot though, and they've rated it pretty highly, so they've gone 70 or above in all the categories. 71% for the graphics, 80 for the sound. Overall score of 80%, an enjoyable if ultimately limited blast, which I couldn't agree with anymore. It's exactly what it is. It's a good blasting game, good shoot 'em up. Limited in terms of it's pretty repetitive, but yeah, can't really argue with that review at all. As one of these reviewers says, Oh No cannot boast the sophistication of their masterpiece Whizball, but its simplicity is its strength. Pace of the action is extremely fast because the player's ship is in constant motion. Oh yeah, there's another comment here. I mentioned this in my review as well. Play therefore reaches such heights of freneticism as only previously witnessed in Minter games. So this guy and me are completely on the same page. So there you go, that sums up all the ZZap reviews compared to my reviews of the games. So let's just go back to my spreadsheet. And what I've done, just to summarise everything, is put all the scores from the different sources onto one page and compared them. Just zoom that in a little bit. So the easiest way to look at this is you're obviously not going to get like for like across the board, but if we look at the top 4, you'll see these are my scores, the first column, then the ZZap scores, then the Lemon scores, and 2 games featuring all 3 top 4s, which is Hero and Oh No, and Chicken Chase appears in 2 as well, and then Eyeball appears in the 2 for ZZap and Lemon, which obviously I completely disagree with. Then if we look at the bottom 4, similar sort of situation. You'll see European Five-a-Side, Jerry the Germ and Beach Buggy Simulator in all 3 sets of scores. And the one anomaly is I've put Eyeball in the bottom 4 and Ninja Scooter in the top 4, whereas the other 2 sources of reviews have put Ninja Scooter Simulator in the bottom 4 and right at the bottom in the case of Lemon 64. Obviously couldn't put Microrhythm in that list because it didn't have a ZZap review, so that's just shown separately. But one interesting thing to look at just to finish off with is the average score. So you can see this is my average across the 10 games, 5.84. Lemon's is 5.85, so pretty much identical. And if you turn ZZap's percentage score into a score out of 10, then their average one, albeit excluding Microrhythm, comes out at 5.62. So pretty much you could say across the 9 games that all 3 sources have got reviews for, we're in pretty close agreement in terms of an average score. We might argue a little bit about where they place in that top 9 in this case, but overall I think pretty consistent agreement, except for the 2 anomalies where I think Ninja Scooter Simulator is much better than Eyeball and everyone else doesn't, basically. So that's it for this first review comparison of the first 10 titles that I've reviewed from the Silverbird range. I'll do this again when I've reviewed another 10 games. Let me know what your thoughts about this, if it was interesting or not, whether I should not bother doing it again because it's just really boring. And I'll be back pretty soon with another video within the next few days. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.